Hello everyone, today is 8th of October, now it's 20 past 10 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. Later on today, towards the evening, I will publish second news update with all the additional main news on my Patreon page and also a Boosty page. And in between their updates, I will publish on my YouTube and the Rumble channels new episode of Headlines, which is basically a short summary of at least some of the news that I will talk in a bit more detail during that second update. So if you want to have access to more news from Russia and simultaneously support my work and my channels, please consider to join our tiny community on Patreon or Boosty. Links are under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And dear friends, there are not just only news updates on my Patreon. There are plenty of videos, extra content about just about life in Russia, including behind the scenes program. Okay, that's being said, let's talk about news now, and I will start with this report from TASS news agency that during the nighttime, Russian air defense systems suppressed and shut down 16 drones that was launched by Kyiv regime to strike deep inside the Russian territory. 14 drones were intercepted over the Belgorod region, and there are also 2 drones over the Black Sea aquatory of the Russian Federation. No reports about casualties on the ground or any more or less significant damage, although, of course, if any update on that, I will share information on my Telegram and in next term updates. RIA Novosti is also reporting that military expert from LPR, Lugansk People's Republic of the Russian Federation, Andrei Marochko, stated that Russian armed forces achieve a significant breakthrough in Crimean direction and are now conducting scale offensive operations to several settlements. Let's go through this news in a bit more detail. So the Russian armed forces broke through their defense of the armed forces of Ukraine in their area of Crimean and began to liberate Serebryanka and the Grigorievka settlements. Retired LPR Lieutenant Colonel Andrei Marochko told the RIA Novosti news agency, in the course of active liberation operation, our troops managed to break through their defense of Georgian forces and advanced southwest of village of Crimean. Advanced units of the Russian armed forces have launched an operation to liberate the settlements of Serebryanka and Grigorievka, Marochko said, citing his own sources. So most likely in upcoming days we will receive information about significant progress of the Russian armed forces in Crimean direction. Also, we have this report from RIA Novosti that fire on a fuel depot in Feodosia city, which is Crimean Peninsula, is waging on 2,500 square meters. Now, according to some independent sources in Russian segment of internet, fire in this fuel depot in Feodosia broke as a result of Kyiv regime's strike that occurred yesterday night. And let me show you Feodosia itself, dear friends. This is Crimean Peninsula, obviously, and Feodosia is southern eastern part of this island. This is the Feodosia city, and this fuel depot is located in close vicinity from the town itself. There are pictures and videos on internet when people from the city see this cloud smoke of burning fuel from that depot, and Kyiv regime and its propaganda try to put this narrative that they achieved some huge success by targeting this fuel depot, while in reality, I just show you the map. Feodosia is quite far away from a line of contact in Kherson sector or Zaporozhye sector, isn't it? And Russian troops don't really need to use Crimea for any supply and support of its troops in these sectors of the front line. After all, Russia has quite a huge land bridge for these purposes, and even Western propaganda is acknowledging that Crimean bridge, for example, is no longer serves any significant purpose as a in terms of military for supply and support because of this land bridge, exactly. And therefore, you tell me how desperate Kyiv regime and its propaganda outlets really are, that they are now celebrating as a sort of a huge military victory operations when they are targeting civilian infrastructure. This fuel depot was serving locals in close vicinity from Feodosia, right? Not even entire Crimea. And what Kiev regime is celebrating? That they make life of residents of Crimea little more difficult, and they may experience some fuel shortages for a day or two. What are they celebrating? Even Ukrainian journalists, by the way, are sick and tired of these crazy narratives that being pushed by Kyiv regime and crazy propaganda. For example, Anatoly Shary, Ukrainian journalist, politician, public figure in exile. He is living in Spain, and the Kyiv regime tried several times to assassinate him for his criticism. And he fed up with all this. In yesterday's video on his channel, he clearly said that something is clearly wrong with Kyiv regime because they are now celebrating attacks on the fuel depots that Russia has thousands and thousands of, and are trying to present it as a kind of huge victory. What the hell, man? Unbelievable. This is face, by the way. This is face of the Kyiv regime and the Ukrainian Nazis. Whenever they target civilians, they celebrate. That's it. Let's continue. As I said, emergency fire is on 2,500 square meters now. Three huge fuel reservoirs are on fire. Basically, emergency services are working on the spot to liquidate this fire, and I guess it will take maybe day two, and fire will extinguish. After all the fuel will just burn out, and that's it. And of course, this terrorist attack on civilian infrastructure not gonna have any influence on operations of the Russian armed forces on Kherson or Zaporozhye sector at all, any influence at all. And dear friends, yesterday I read several news about this situation in Feodosia, and according to local authorities, there was no casualties on the ground as a result of this emergency situation. RIA Novosti is reporting that, well, there were explosions in a Kyiv region this morning. This was reported by Kyiv regime's propaganda, although there are no specific information what exactly, where exactly, and these explosions occur and what exactly was targeted. If this was a Russian long-range strike on military and logistics infrastructure of the Kyiv regime. Of course, if any update on that, I will share additional information on my Telegram channel. And the next update also we have this report from RT that UK and US helped Ukraine to plan a new Chernobyl, and this was stated by Russian intel chief. So information comes from a competent source for sure. British and American spies helped Ukraine develop plans for blowing up Kursk nuclear power plant, which would have plunged Europe into another radiation nightmare. The head of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, Sergei Narishkin, has stated Ukrainian troops crossed into Russia's Kursk region in August, but were stopped short of nuclear power plant in Kurchatov city. Speaking at their meeting of intelligence and security principles of post-Soviet states in Astana, which is capital of Kazakhstan, former Soviet Republic, last week, Narishkin revealed their West's disturbing plans for this facility, Kursk nuclear power plant. According to intelligence obtained by Russian SVR or Foreign Intelligence Service, the planned terrorist attack included taking and mining the Kursk MPP, he said, according to remarks made public on Monday. Had they been able to carry it out, Europe would have faced an environmental and humanitarian disaster comparable to Chernobyl, Narishkin added. And of course, we all know that in 1986, accident at the Chernobyl MPP caused one of its reactors to explode and catch fire, forcing the evacuation of the town of Pripyat. in close vicinity from their MPP, which is still abandoned, by the way, and the creation of the 30-kilometer exclusion zone on the border between present-day Ukraine and Belarus. Radioactive fallout from their blaze was carried by the wind all the way to Scotland. According to Narishkin, British and American intelligence have provided Ukraine with information that allowed it to attack Russia's civilian infrastructure, including high-resolution satellite imagery of the border regions. Ukrainian artillery used this information to carry out strikes with the rockets and their drones. Available intelligence indicates that the Western intelligence agencies, primarily the British MI6, have systematically prepared Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance groups to organize provocations at the number of nuclear power plants in Russia. Their SVR has claimed, alleging that the British spies and their Ukrainian counterparts were developing an operation to blow up power lines connecting nuclear power plants with the Russian national energy grid. The Zaporozhye MPP in Energodar has been a target of Ukrainian attacks also since mid-2022. Europe's largest nuclear power plant eventually had to shut down due to hazard, which included drones, rockets, loss of water for its cooling systems, and even an amphibious assault by Ukrainian commandos in 2022, which went disastrously for the regime, obviously, and I reported about this at the time in my update. International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, observed the observers deployed on their site have repeatedly acknowledged attacks on the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, but have refused to identify who is responsible. And of course, they will refuse. Of course, because IAEA, as I said many times before, and the head of IAEA, Rafael Grossi, they are run by CIA, right? This organization is working, this formerly UN institution, by the way, is in reality is working for a Western ruling class. And that's why observers that are on the spot on Zaporozhye nuclear power plant never acknowledge that it's a key regime that conducting these nuclear terrorism attacks. Russia has described their attacks as an attempt of nuclear blackmail, while Ukraine has alleged that Moscow is shelling the plant to defame Kiev. Yes, of course, Russians are shelling themselves, you know. They are bored so much that they don't know what to do on the line of contact or anywhere else, and they are just shelling themselves now. I mean, that's their explanations of the Kiev regime. So you tell me how adequate those individuals are. They're Zelensky and all of his criminal associates, or their Western backers for that matter. So very disturbing information being revealed by head of Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. Of course, none of us are probably surprised to hear that Western secret services, US and UK secret services, are engaged in a terrorist activity. After all, these organizations were involved in creation of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and many other terrorist groups in this world. So therefore, me personally, not at all surprised to hear that these so-called secret services were actively engaged in planning of the terrorist attacks on Russia, nuclear terrorism, basically. But I wonder, you know, news is important. I have to share, obviously, this news in my updates, but I wonder if any Western media outlet will report about it. I doubt that they will. But, I mean, Western societies has to know, by the way. Western societies have to know in what kind of activity their governments, in what kind of criminal activity and their dangerous activity for all of humanity, their governments and formally their secret services are engaged. Let's continue. TASS news agency is reporting that finance minister of Russian Federation stated that military spendings are the priority of their not just finance ministry, but also entire economical bloc of the Russian government, which is quite understandable, absolutely. After all, Western ruling class, collective West, is waging this proxy war against Russia already third year now, and Russia is obviously under immense volume of Western sanctions, over 20,000 at this point. And just a couple of days ago, I reported about a draft bill for Russian federal budget for 2025. And in that draft bill, defense spendings are on the level of 13.5 trillion rubles, if I remember correctly, which is approximately 150 billion US dollars. A huge volume, obviously, but still nowhere near of the spendings of the US, for example. Uh, and as you know, US defense budget year-on-year terms are 700 to 800 billion dollars. You tell me from whom US is defending itself with this 7 to 800 billion? From whom? Who is attacking US? Terrorist organizations that were created by CIA and then used as a reasoning to wage these forever wars and reasoning for increasing spendings on military. Anyways, let's continue. And in reality, we all understand, dear friends, US has like over 800 military bases worldwide, right? And maintenance of these bases costs a lot, obviously. Also, military personnel on these bases have to be maintained in more or less okay shape, right? That will cost also a lot. And to provide these bases, by the way, which companies are used by Pentagon? And that's it. Follow the money, and everything will become clear. Pentagon basically is operating for quite a while now as a sort of private military company for U.S. military industrial complex. That's all, really. And as long as U.S. citizens are okay with it, as long as the majority of the U.S. public is not asking questions, what the hell is going on here? While infrastructure is crumbling, while inflation is in over the top, middle class is shrinking. Why on earth you are spending like 700 to 800 billion on a Pentagon, and then on top of that, hundreds of billions of dollars to prolong some proxy wars that you are waging against this country and that country? I mean, until public in US will start asking questions and demanding answers, I don't think anything will change in this regard. Anyways, let's continue. Kommersant newspaper is reporting that there was an article in Financial Times, according to which at least some officials in Ukraine are considering now uh, they are considering to seize some territories in Russian favor to join the NATO in exchange of joining the NATO. Well, I can tell you this is a non-starter, 100% non-starter. But let's translate this report anyway and go through some details. So some of Ukrainian officials are secretly worried that a lack of the personnel, firepower, and support from the West to take back all their territories that have passed to Russia, the Financial Times reports. According to the newspaper, there is talks in Ukraine behind the closed doors about a deal in which Russia will retain actual but not legal control over about 1/5 of Ukraine, and the rest of the country will join NATO or receive equivalent security guarantees, according to Financial Times, against the background of the surrender of the positions in the east by the Ukrainian armed forces. In Washington and some Western capitals, the mood is changing. Now, some countries that are allies of Ukraine reluctantly recognize that their best settlement option may be negotiations that leave most of their country under the control of Ukrainian authorities. The newspaper notes that Ukraine's prospects are clouded primarily by fears that Donald Trump will win the US election next month and will seek a quick end to the war. Ukrainian Channel 24, citing a source in the office of the Ukrainian president, writes that no one in the West offered Kiev security guarantees, which the Financial Times writes about. There is no such conversation at all. The TV channel quotes the source as saying, last week the Financial Times also wrote that Western and Ukrainian officials are increasingly coming to conclusion that the conflict can only be resolved by using the German scenario. We are talking about agreement under which the lost territories remain under the control of the Russian armed forces and the rest of Ukraine joins NATO. The Kremlin said that none of their publications about peace plans in Ukraine has a realistic basis, and this is absolutely correct, by the way. All these scenarios are total nonsense, total nonsense. No way, no way Ukraine will join NATO. You know my take on this situation. I believe once this conflict will end, Ukraine will be divided between Russia and NATO. Western Ukraine most likely will be reclaimed by Poland, Hungary, and Romania because territories of the Western Ukraine, some 70% of which used to be part of Poland before Second World War. Transcarpathia region used to be part of Czechoslovakia, but that's before after First World War. But before First World War, Transcarpathia was a part of Hungary, so therefore most likely Hungary will have a claim for this region. And after all, there are hundreds of thousands of ethnic Hungarians that are living until now in Transcarpathia region, and there are certain areas in the Western Ukraine that used to be part of Romania before Second World War and most likely will be claimed by Romania. And because all these three countries are members of NATO, I am saying that Western Ukraine eventually probably will join NATO as a part of these NATO member states, right? But rest of the Ukraine will be controlled by Russia. One way or another, but rest of the Ukraine most likely will be controlled by Russia and eventually after referendums will take place, will join Russia. Only question is, and I am saying, by the way, at least from Kharkiv to Odessa region for sure. At least from Kharkiv, let's the map. So at least from Kharkiv region to Odessa region, all of it will be controlled by Russia and will join Russia eventually. Kharkiv region, Dnipropetrovsk region, Zaporozhye region, Nikolaev region, Odessa region. 100%. Right? There can be no questions about that. Moscow will not negotiate on anything unless, right? Because this is, after all, historically Russian territories and the Russian speaker people are living there, right? But still question is, what about Kiev and surrounding areas, right? And I always acknowledge that there are slight chance that Kiev and surrounding areas may remain on the political map as a sort of landlocked quasi-state with a constitution which says that this quasi-state will maintain its neutrality forever, right? I find it difficult to understand why would Moscow ever agree on that. But there might be some circumstances, after all, Moscow also wants this conflict to end, right? So there might be some circumstances due to which Moscow may agree on such a development. But nothing like German scenario, by the way. No, Germany was divided. There was a Federative Republic of Germany, Western Germany. There was a Democratic Republic of Germany, Eastern Germany. And Germany was divided after Second World War, right? And nothing like that will happen in Ukraine. Western Ukraine, once it's reclaimed by Poland, Hungary, and Romania, will of course not maintain name of Ukraine on it, and the rest of the Ukraine will join Russia and will become Russian regions. right? Like Crimea become Russian region, like Zaporozhye sector, Zaporozhye region is a Russian now, LPR and DPR. Kharkov region will be the same, Dnipropetrovsk region will be the same, right? Odessa region will be as any other region of the Russian Federation, right? What? That's that's what is happening. And when it comes to Kiev and surrounding areas, as I said, maybe there is a slight chance that these territories will maintain their quasi-statehood under the name of Ukraine. Although I don't know, I'm a bit skeptical of that also, because Russia is clearly defeating Western ruling class that started this proxy war against us. And why would Russia accept anything other than unconditional surrender of the Western ruling class, capitulation, basically? I don't know. But definitely, by the way, all these scenarios that Western propaganda and Western public figures or politicians are pushing now, that there might be peace if Russia will maintain de facto control over some territories and the rest will join NATO and that kind of nonsense. No, it's not happening. It's just you know, wet dreams of all those Russophobes uh, that provoke this conflict, right? So that's my take on this news in or article in Financial Times. And also, dear friends, on very same topic, we have this information from Vzglyad newspaper that J.D. Vance, running mate of the Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, stated that proposed basically that Ukraine should cede some territories and their aspirations to join NATO in attempt to achieve peace. So J.D. Vance already has a different approach than an article in Financial Times is talking about, right? But let's go through this news also, because me personally think this approach from J.D. Vance is also non-starter, although a bit more realistic than one was presented by Financial Times. Let's go through this news. So, U.S. vice presidential candidate from the Republican Party, J.D. Vance, suggested that Ukraine abandoned the territories occupied by Russia, liberated by Russia. Let's be clear on that, and from membership in NATO, as well as get guarantees of sovereignty and neutrality. The media reported, according to the American conservative, Vance's initiative includes Ukraine's abandonment of their territories occupied by Russia, liberated by Russia, and its desire for NATO membership. As Vladimir Solovyov, chairman of the Union of Journalists of Russia, wrote in his Telegram channel, in return, Ukraine is supposed to receive guarantees of sovereignty and neutrality. Vance believes that the restoration of Ukraine should be financed by Germany. Well, I don't know about that also. I mean, did you ask German citizens? Are they happy with paying, I don't know, tens of billions of dollars in addition what already was spent by Germany for Kiev regime? I don't think Germans will be happy with this, but I don't know. Let's see. Trump's running mate in the U.S. presidential race stresses that the constitution of the continuation of the conflict requires huge costs that are unsustainable for both U.S. and European countries. According to Vance, such measures could reduce their tension and their economic burden associated with the conflict for the Western powers and contribute to a more stable settlement of their situation in Ukraine. So basically, as I said, J.D. Vance at least tries to have a more pragmatic approach to this conflict, and I guess he's talking about, whenever he's talking about Ukraine, this is a combined position, I guess, of his and Donald Trump's. And well, it is becoming more and more clear that it seems like Vance and Trump really want this conflict to end, At least it seems like this is their approach. And well, if they will win election, if they are about to defeat neolibs and their deep state in US, on which I have some doubts still, but it is possibility, obviously. So if they are about to become leaders of the US, then well, they can definitely fast track ending of this conflict. As I said, Washington may negotiate with Moscow how this conflict should end. I don't think Kremlin will have any issues if Western Ukraine will be reclaimed by countries that this territory used to belong to before Second World War, before First World War, and so on. But rest of the Ukraine is none of the Western business, right? So if White House after presidential elections will agree on that, then this conflict might end very fast, right? Very fast. In any other ways, if White House will continue pushing narratives that what Moscow can keep whatever territories are under Russian control now, and rest is should be neutral state. No, this is not started because Ukraine should be neutral state, right? After Soviet Union collapse, Ukraine's constitution stated it clearly that Ukraine was maintaining its neutrality. But what happened in 2014? US Secret Services, European Secret Services conducted coup d'etat, right? And even before that, they were actively pushing Ukraine towards EU, towards NATO, against its own constitution, right? So therefore, obviously, Moscow learned its lesson, and obviously Moscow will have no trust in anything that the West will propose, right? So therefore, only solution that can be acceptable for Russia, I believe, is that Western Ukraine keep it, right, and deal with the Ukrainian neo-Nazis there. But rest of the Ukraine is none of your business. Kiev regime will capitulate. Russian troops will establish control over their entire territory. Russian troops will liberate the entire territory from this occupying regime, and then referendums will take place, and people will have an opportunity to have their say. If they want to join Russia, they are more than welcome. They will join Russia. If they want to maintain their own statehood, okay, I don't think Russia will be against it as long as uh, all the rights of the Russian speakers are protected. And of course, it will be protected because denazification uh, will be in full force on those territories, right? And this, let's say, new republic under the name of Ukraine, in that case, if people will vote that they want to maintain statehood, this new Ukraine will be as friendly to Russia as it should be always. But me personally, I'm quite sure, by the way, that locals from Kharkov to Odessa will definitely vote for joining the Russian Federation. I have not even slight doubts about it, not even a 1% doubt about it. So that's what is happening. And if Western ruling class, Western elites accept Russian proposition, and I guess Moscow will have a somewhat similar take on the situation as I do. If Western ruling class will accept it, okay, this conflict will end soon, very fast. If then Russia will establish control, Russia will anyways establish control over their historical Russian land and will liberate these territories from occupying regime. Only question is about Kiev that I have. There may be some circumstances in which Moscow might agree that Ukraine, Kiev and surrounding areas will maintain quasi-state status on the political map, landlocked quasi-state status, but still, I think most likely, uh, Ukraine will be divided in ways when Western Ukraine is reclaimed by its Western neighbors, and the rest of the Ukraine will join Russia, as it belongs, right? RIA Novosti is reporting that while JD Vance, running mate of the Trump, is talking about peaceful solutions for Ukrainian crisis, French leadership has some different ideas, and we have this report now that France will provide Kiev regime, formerly Kiev regime, with Mirage-2000 fighter planes, and deliveries will start in the beginning of 2025. No detailed information how many of those planes were promised to Kiev regime, but in any case, whatever the number is, we all understand that whenever French planes arrive on the battlefield, these planes will be piloted by French militaries, right? No one gonna buy no more nonsense that Ukrainian pilots managed to master Mirage 2000s in just months' time, or 5 months' time, or 10 months' time, right? So whenever these planes will arrive on the battlefield in Ukrainian air, those planes will be operated by French pilots, and maintenance will be done by French personnel. And Russia will take out those planes in a very same way that F-16s were destroyed. According to reports, by the way, Kiev regime and NATO already lost about 8 planes, maybe more, but at least 8 F-16s as a result of long-range Russian missile strikes on bases where these F-16s were located. And yesterday I reported about Russian strikes on additional strikes on Starokonstantinov airfield, isn't it, in Khmelnytsky region, which is a western part of Ukraine. And later on, there was reports from Ukraine that local authorities were issuing warnings for local residents to stay in shelters or close to the shelters because detonations of their munition may occur on this Starokonstantinov air base. I did not see any additional news on that. Maybe as a result of Russian Kinzhal hypersonic missile strikes yesterday, not just planes were destroyed, but also underground storage facilities where Kiev regime was storing some weapon systems. Let's continue anyway, and we have a statement from Foreign Minister of Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, who is saying that Ukraine and West have no intention of peace. So Russia would agree to a diplomatic settlement of the Ukraine conflict that would resolve its root causes, but neither Kiev nor its Western backers appear open to such a resolution. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in an interview with their Newsweek magazine, published on Monday. According to the diplomat, Moscow would prefer to end the conflict once and for all, rather than merely achieve a ceasefire. For this, Lavrov stressed that the West must stop supplying weapons to Ukraine, and Kiev should end its hostilities and return to their neutral, non-bloc, non-nuclear status, protect the Russian language, and respect the rights and the freedoms of its citizens. So this is take of Lavrov on the situation, and who will disagree that not Kiev regime, not its Western backers, not really are ready yet for negotiations, capitulation. Their capitulation, because they will capitulate, obviously. Western ruling class lost this proxy war against Russia. It's factual. Only formalization is left. Also, dear friends, TASS news agency is reporting that, Belarusian security services open a criminal case on attempt of so investigative committee of the Belarus has opened criminal case against 45 people who are abroad and are accused of plotting to seize power and create or participate in an extremist groups. This is stated in the statement of their ministry, and why am I not surprised? Of course, Polish secret services, British secret services, US secret services actively working actively to destabilize Belarus. Somehow they tried uh, some time ago to conduct regime change in Belarus. They failed, but it did not mean that they stopped. And the Belarusian counterintelligence service, Belarusian security services, with active support of Russian colleagues, are working on neutralizing all the threats that are generated by Western secret services. And there are, at least 45 individuals that are most likely operating under orders of their Polish secret services of the Baltic states, US and UK, being charged of for their criminal activity. And dear friends, before I continue with some other news, let me notice that this channel or several channels that I have on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram, this small media project basically is completely subscriber funded, and I will be immensely grateful. I will be immensely grateful if you will consider to support my work with small donations through PayPal or Boosty platform. And this is Boosty platform from which you can donate if you want, or if you want to support her, of course, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, which is much more developed than Boosty page. Although I have updates on Boosty also regularly. All the links are in this video description box and in the pinned comment. And I really hope um, our community on Boosty will reach 200 before end of this year. 200 Patreons. Um, there are more than 300 subscribers overall, but more than half is free subscribers. Yesterday, after one more member joined our community, we reached 170 Patreons on Patreon platform, and 30 more, dear friends, 30 more members in our Patreon community, and I guess this project will be in a much safer place than now. So if you can, please consider, if you like my work, if you want to support me and these channels and uh, independent source of information from Russia, then you're more than welcome to join our Patreon community. And of course, many thanks to members of our community who supported my work and continues to support through different means, PayPal, Boosty, Patreon. Truly grateful for this unique opportunity to work in this field of news and political commentary. That being said, let's continue with some additional news. And how long is this update? It's already 43 minutes. I will go through at least headlines, dear friends. So, Kommersant newspaper is reporting that there was 180 launches of different type of missiles, rockets from Lebanon towards Israel, according to Israeli Defense Force. Also, we have this report from RIA Novosti that Israeli Air Force conducted about 120 strikes in just 1 hour on Hezbollah's positions yesterday. At least that's what IDF is reporting. RIA Novosti also has information that Hezbollah claimed that they conducted missile strikes on Haifa yesterday, which is true, by the way. There was videos and photos that were circulating on internet about this strike on Haifa, which is one of the biggest Israeli cities. RIA Novosti is reporting also that Hezbollah targeted their headquarters, military base of Israeli intelligence. And this information also reported by France press. Base was located in close vicinity from Tel Aviv city. RT is also reporting that Iran has at least 10 plans for Israeli attack, according to media. So the military has prepared at least 10 scenarios for possible Israeli strikes, according to news agency run by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I can understand that Tehran is preparing for possible further escalation with Israel, and there are statements made in Tehran that if Israel will attack Iran, then Iran will retaliate with much more significant force than previous long-range missile attacks. And dear friends, there was a rumor start circulate yesterday, and still until now rumors are circulating on the internet that there was some explosions close to not far away from nuclear facilities of Iran in Isfahan area. Isfahan is a city in Iran, obviously, and today I read statements from Iranian authorities that there was no explosions, no nothing in Isfahan or anywhere else. So it was a speculation that spread like wildfire on internet. Also, we have artists report that UK rejects Macron's call for Israel arms embargo. British Defense Secretary John Healey on Monday rejected French President Emmanuel Macron's earlier call to stop weapons deliveries to Israel. In an interview with the Sky News, Healey signaled the UK will not back Macron's initiative as it works different system different system for arms supplies. Why am I not surprised, first of all? And secondly, I don't think Macron was genuine in his call. I truly don't believe Macron was genuine in his call. He probably was making statements for internal use, for domestic purposes, and France will not stop any supplies, any shipments of the weapons to Israel, if there was any, because usually, usual partners in terms of military supplies for Israel is U.S. and in a lesser way UK, but France. I don't think France was transferring to Israel a significant volume of munition or the weapons anyways. So therefore, most likely, Macron's call was just a political statement for internal use, although he was heavily criticized by Israeli leadership for that statements. And I wonder how long it will take before Macron will try to, explain himself to Israeli leaders, and before he will start apologizing, because he did exactly the same once before, isn't it? RIA Novosti is reporting that Russian President Vladimir Putin had a phone conversation with the Turkish leader Erdogan, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and they discuss, among other topics, they also discuss situation in the Middle East. Well, Turkey's leadership is lately become very vocal about Israeli actions, and several times Turkish leadership called for UN to authorize some military action to stop Israeli military hostility. But yet again, I mean, Turkey is a member of the NATO. Turkey has a second strongest, according to some reports, by the way, second largest army in NATO after US, right? And definitely Turkish militaries are one of the most capable militaries among NATO member states. much more capable than French and UK militaries, for example. Only difference is France and the UK are nuclear powers. That's all. Otherwise, if France and the UK had no nuclear weapons, then Turkish military would be considered much more powerful than militaries of these countries, for sure. And there are questions on internet whenever Erdogan or his colleagues are making these strong statements against actions of the Israeli leadership. Uh, I mean, what the hell? You have one of the strongest armies in the world. If you want to take action, then take action. Otherwise, it looks like you are just making some political statements for whatever purposes, for domestic use or for the statements to be seen, to gain some political points in Muslim world, right? But in reality, you are not willing to do much about it, really. At least that's the commentaries that I see on some independent media outlets from UK, from US. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe this is the truth. Maybe Turkish leadership is just making statements for to gain some political points. Maybe that's the case, or maybe not. I don't know, but if you ask me, I will definitely prefer the escalation to happen in the Middle East. There is no need for additional new countries to get engaged in this confrontation. It's exactly the opposite. Whoever is engaged in the conflict should de-escalate, right? And the world community should be focused on that. Unfortunately, we all know that the world community is not really capable of much because they cannot stop this escalation in the Middle East for how long now? There are only calls to de-escalate, 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 and that's it. Seems like world community has no true influence, right? Also, dear friends, we have this news that according to US intelligence, Russia, China, Cuba, and Iran are interfering in domestic politics in US. Yes, of course. Uh, is there anybody in this world that really takes seriously any statements that comes from US so-called intelligence nowadays or from US elites in general? I don't know. So an official in the office of the Director of National Intelligence said Monday that the Russia, China, Cuba, and Iran have stepped up attempts to interfere in the US presidential and congressional elections. Warning highlights the threat that the online disinformation also poses to state and the local elections. The Associated Press writes the agency reports that, according to US intelligence, Russia is trying to undermine the support of congressional candidates who are in favor of providing assistance to Ukraine. CNN claims that, according to US intelligence, Russia is once again trying to promote Trump's candidacy. Come on, man. You cannot be serious. Wow, this Russia Gate 2.0. Okay, okay, dear friends. I mean, I have English speaking channels, right? English language channels. How often I spoke about U.S. presidential elections? Really, not that many times, right? If there are some statements that made by Harris or Trump or J.D. Vance, I may talk about their statements. But presidential elections itself, very rarely I mention it even because you know why? I just don't care. And trust me, not that many people here in Russia really cares about the outcome of that elections because we all understand perfectly well here in Russia that no matter who is in White House, true decision makers are in shadows, right? And if anybody ever had any doubts about it, then last 3 4 years of Biden's administration is a clear example of that, right? Biden was barely able to recognize himself in a mirror, right? And how anybody can believe that this person was making any crucial decisions about internal or foreign policies of US. I mean, it's not, it's, you cannot believe that, right? So therefore, what difference does it make if it's Kamala Harris president or Trump president? For us, I mean, for us, for Russia, it does makes no difference because decision makers still are in shadows, right? For US itself, for US public, there might be some difference because after all, there are ideological differences, at least formally, officially, between the two camps, right? And therefore, if Republicans are in power, in White House, probably neolibs will struggle to further impose their ideology on public. Maybe that's not even 100%, right? But if Republicans are in power, maybe traditional values, family values in US will be little more protected, right? From the assault that neolibs are, conducting. And that's all difference, really. And maybe Trump's presidency will have some influence on the southern border in US. And that's all, really, isn't it? So I can understand that for domestic uh, issues in US, there may be some, difference between two camps. But for rest of the world, I mean, US foreign policy is not changing, right? Trump already was a president and he imposed more sanctions on Russia than Obama before him, right? So what we are talking about, friends, that's why I'm saying that all this nonsense, by the way, from US intelligence and US Democrats mainly, I mean, cannot be taken seriously. That Russia is interfering in congressional elections. Who cares about US Congress, for God's sake? Come on now. And China, and they have to mention Iran, obviously. Iran is everywhere. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. And unfortunately, these people are believing in that, right? There is a stranger stuff is happening in the Western propaganda when, in one hand, they want to promote this narrative that Russia or China or Cuba or Iran are on the brink of collapse and can do nothing and that kind of stuff. In other hand, there are always China involved somewhere. Russia is always involved in everything, obviously. Iran also, and then now Cuba. That's something new relatively because not that many times Cuba was mentioned, but now, okay, they want this anti-Cuban sentiment to be promoted again in the US, I guess. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. They should, come up with one narrative. Is Russia on the brink of collapse, or is Russia all powerful and are engaged in all sorts of operations all around the world? Which one is? Uh, as I said, man, you cannot take these idiots seriously, man. The U.S. intelligence community is a bunch of truly uneducated morons. That's all, right? That's all, man. Maybe there are one or two truly clever individuals there, but most likely they are ignored. And this shows on US politics and on the state of US itself. Vzglyad newspaper is reporting that Prime Minister of Georgia stated that about priorities of Georgia government. And let's go through this news here. So Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze said that in the coming years, the country's main priority will be pragmatic policy and the peaceful settlement of their conflict with Russia. Kobakhidze, presenting the election program of the ruling Georgian Dream Democratic Georgia Party, noted that the settlement of their conflict with Russia is one of the most important priorities for Georgia in the coming years. He commented on the foreign policy plans of the authorities for the next 4 years, calling the most important national task to to reset relations with the United States and the European Union. Kobakhidze stressed that the priority tasks are to deepen relations with NATO and strategic partnership with China. He also stressed the importance of further deepening relations with their neighboring Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. So, okay, okay. These policies, by the way, when you cannot play all sides. It may work once, twice, but it would not work forever. And therefore, at one point, obviously, Georgian political class have to come to the terms that in best interests of Georgian citizens, in best interests of Georgia, is to prioritize strategical partnership with Russia to achieve that level of strategical partnership with Russia. And obviously, if Georgian government will continue with its current policies of pragmatic approach when it comes to relationships with Russia, obviously it will play a huge positive role because Moscow, I believe, will be very helpful to resolve issues between Tbilisi, capital of Georgia, Tskhinvali, capital of South Ossetia, with which Tbilisi had a conflict, obviously, unfortunately, and also with Sukhumi, capital of Abkhazia. This is a breakaway regions from Georgia that was recognized as independent states by Russian Federation after 2008 conflict that Saakashvili's regime initiated in South Ossetia first and then provoked also Russian involvement in the conflict after Saakashvili ordered fire to be opened on Russian peacekeepers. So I believe a pragmatic approach will definitely be will bring success to Georgia. And I believe Moscow will not be against it all if Tbilisi will initiate talks with Tskhinvali and Sukhumi to get united again under confederation, with moratorium of leaving confederation for at least 15 plus 10 years, right? And I'm 100% convinced give residents of South Ossetia, Abkhazia, Georgia 25 years after peace and prosperity, and none of these parties in confederation will even think about leaving the confederation, right? And Moscow will be in support of this idea, which will work, by the way. And I'm one of the few, if not the only one, to be honest, that was promoting idea of confederation when I was living in Georgia and when I was Georgian citizen and Georgian journalist. And I still believe, by the way, I'm talking about some 20 years ago, Saakashvili took my citizenship in 2009, right? And since then, until 2021, I was stateless person. So, I was trying to promote this idea of confederation for decades, and I'm still a believer in this idea that confederation is a way to go forward for Tbilisi, Tskhinvali, and Sukhumi, and Moscow will support this idea. I'm sure about it because it has. If confederation is created, Moscow don't have to recall its recognition of the independence of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Moscow will just recognize this new state, new confederation, and that's it. And majority, trust me, majority of the issues on political level, at least, between Tbilisi and Moscow will be resolved shortly after that. So it is good. It is good to see that Georgian leadership is prioritizing not just relationships with the West, but also relationships with Russia. This is important. And first of all, dear friends, of course, Georgia is getting closer and closer to parliamentary elections that will take place in a couple of weeks' time on 26th of October. And I really hope Georgian society will stay strong and unite. And I hope Georgia's security forces will stay out of politics and Georgian government will stay united, because I'm 110%, by the way, convinced that Western ruling class, US secret services, French secret services, UK secret services, they will try their best to use their assets in Georgia, and they have assets in Georgia, by the way. They will use their best to destabilize country with active use of their assets, to conduct regime change, and then to put in power their puppets, and then sacrifice Georgia as a kind of second front against Russia, as they sacrifice Ukraine. So Georgian society definitely needs to stay strong and unite, for sure. Georgia is entering very difficult times of its history. Let's continue with some more news, dear friends. So RT is reporting that EU airlines, both airliners, both want Chinese to pay for flying over Russia. That's something strange and somewhat interesting. So the EU should establish financial measures to curb competition from Chinese airlines that can fly across Russian airspace, according to Royal Dutch Airline. KLM's CEO Marjan Rintel. Western countries closed their airspace to Russian airlines as a part of sanctions imposed after the outbreak of the Ukraine conflict in 2022. In response, Moscow banned aircrafts from their unfriendly nations also to fly over Russia, forcing EU planes to reroute, resulting in higher fuel consumption and increase the costs. Russian aerospace is close to European airlines, while Chinese carriers fly over it, which can save 2 to 4 hours. You see that reflected in pricing, and consequently, our costs are higher. Rintel said in an interview with the Dutch broadcaster WNL on Sunday. Rintel suggested that Brussels should intervene to address this competitive imbalance. Europe can at least explore how we can level the playing field by adjusting pricing or examining other alternatives, she stated. In response to rising costs, KLM plans austerity measures aimed at saving 450 million euros or 490 million dollars annually, 100 million euros by adjusting in-flight catering, Rintel stated. So basically, this person, CEO of KLM, instead of complaining for criminal actions of their Western ruling class, Western ruling elites, and their criminal politics, due to which Western businesses are struggling, this person is calling for some sanctions to be taken against Chinese companies. How crazy is that, man? How crazy? If this is the competition, then, well, I mean, Western businesses are doomed to fail if they think this is the way to go forward, right? It's not Chinese airliners' fault that EU shut down its airspace for Russian avia companies first, and then Russia had to respond by shutting down Russian airspace for Western carriers, right? So what this person is complaining about, or if you have complained, then ask your government to act adequately if they can. Chinese have nothing to do with it. But yet again, what idiots, man! And these people are in charge of these huge companies. I'm not at all surprised. These businesses, by the way, these multinational corporations are failing down one after another because of the CEOs like that, man. Uneducated, stupid individuals. That's all. That are on the position of CEO because of the corrupt system in the West in general, right? All the way, by the way, from politics to business. That's it. RIA Novosti is reporting that Russian Ministry of Agriculture, corrected its predictions on grain harvest this year, downgraded basically uh, forecaster, and the latest indicators are that in 2024 harvest of grain in Russia will be 132 million tons of grain, which is significantly less than previous forecast. Although, I mean, 132 million tons of grain definitely not sounds like a little volume, but due to better weather conditions in certain regions of the Russian Federation this year, also due to difficult situation on borderline regions with their to control territory, Bryansk, Kursk regions. Therefore, harvest was a little less than predicted, but still 102 million tons of grain. That's a huge volume. Russia is will and Russia is one of the main breadbaskets of this world, and no matter what, obviously Russia will maintain this position and will get even bigger. Just give it another 10, 15, 20 years. And Russian agricultural sector will be main uh, provider of the food to this world. One of the main providers. RIA Novosti is reporting that Russian golden reserves reached about $200 billion dollars in its price, which is well quite significant. Exact number is 119.8 billion, and well, this is quite significant safety cushion, isn't it? When you have gold for 200 billion, and I guess this number will continue to rise. This number will definitely continue to rise because no matter what is happening with this currency and that currency, there are certain commodities that basically always maintain their value. And gold is one of them. And dear friends, gold is not just maintaining its value, but gold prices are reaching record heights almost on weekly basis now. So it is obviously good numbers, and dear friends, uh, one or two more news. Vzгляд newspaper is reporting that well, U.S. Economical expert Kyle Shostak is predicting that oil prices might reach $100 if confrontation between if escalation between Israel and Iran will continue, and if Iranian oil will no longer reach world market. Well, if Iranian oil will not reach oil market, then Iran will shut down Persian Gulf. Iran will shut down Hormuz Strait, and in that case, oil from entire region will no longer reach world market, and oil prices will be not $100 and not even 200. I guess oil prices will reach much higher levels in that scenario. So therefore, it is better for the world economy. It is better for everybody if we will see de-escalation in the Middle East. No one needs this escalation. Only groups in this world that wants really to see escalation in the Middle East and regional war there is the Western ruling class and their proxy in Israel, their proxy Israeli government. That's it. They want regional war, but nobody else in this world, right? And I said many times before, by the way, why I think Western ruling class wants to provoke a regional war in the Middle East. Just take a look at this map, dear friends. This is Persian Gulf. This is Hormuz, obviously. Some 90, over 90% of oil and LNG that is produced in this region goes through Hormuz Strait. It's shipped through Persian Gulf and Hormuz Strait, right? And who is the main customer for the regional countries? China. China is the main customer. And that's why I think Western ruling class, in their attempt to harm China in any way possible, is trying now to provoke regional war in the Middle East, so that navigation will shut down in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait, and China will lose its access to Middle Eastern energy, which will be huger, which will have huge impact on Chinese economy, obviously, and Chinese energy security. Right? That's what Western ruling class wants. But hopefully, regional countries and the world community will manage to avoid this level of escalation, and there will be no regional war in the Middle East. Anyways, let's continue, dear friends. One more news, and that's it for today's first update. So we have this report that SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket launched to orbit a satellite that will help scientists to study opportunities of intercepting asteroids, which is obviously important. Humanity is too focused, obviously, for on topics that are relevant right now on Earth, but there are some dangers that are coming from outer space, and we should at least try and prepare ourselves, right, for possible some dangers from the space. And so Falcon 9 rocket launched the European Space Agency's Hera satellite into orbit on Monday, according to their launch vehicle developer SpaceX. The goal of their mission is to investigate a possible kinetic impact on the asteroid that is approaching Earth. The launch of the rocket with the satellite was carried out from the 40th launch complex of the Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral in Florida. So, well, good luck to European scientists on this mission, because it is important. Of course, it is important because you never know. You never know. There are so many times when scientists are noticing some asteroids that are flying by here just a couple of days before they are passing quite often between Earth and the Moon, right? Which is not that big of a distance. It's only like 300,000 kilometers, isn't it, from Earth to the Moon, approximately. So, of course, humanity will be better off if we will find out how to divert these incoming asteroids, and this mission might help in that. Okay, this is it for now. Quite a long update, dear friends. It's a long time since I had this long update, like 1 hour and 18, 19 minutes, but hopefully you will find this update interesting, informative, and useful, also entertaining. And if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything or any topic. Dear friends, thanks to you, we managed to influence algorithm yesterday also on the first update. Headlines did not really manage to bypass algorithms barriers, but our first update did. It had about like 14,000 plus views, and maybe we will manage to influence algorithm today also uh, with your likes and comments. And if you can, dear friends, please share information about my channel with your friends in real life or on internet on any of the platforms that you are actively using. And finally, if you like my work and want to support, you can do it with a donation or by subscribing to my Patreon page or Boosty page. All the links are under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.